Hello, this is Amanda Cassar, and welcome to Season 3 of Financial Secrets Revealed, where we continue to meet the experts. Today, I am joined by the lovely Bob DePasquale. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Thanks, Amanda. I'm pumped to be here. We're speaking to the experts. I don't know if I'm an expert, but I'll do my best.
Well, you've got a very interesting take. You're a CFP, you're based in the States, you've got a finance background, but you've got this whole idea about giving makes you rich. It's all about being generous. Now, this would be completely opposite to what most people think about money. So, how did all this start for you?
Wow. So I knew a little bit about money from a young age, and we've talked before, and we've kind of gone back and forth about what we believe about the education system and how people probably aren't taught enough about money at a young age. I was lucky enough that my mom worked in a bank for many, many years when I was growing up. So I got some basic lessons about saving and spending less than you earn and that sort of thing. But it wasn't until my college years that I got the true message of generosity. And my experience in college is pretty unique. And so ever since then, I've really been trying to live out my generosity. And yes, I truly believe that giving is receiving.
So 2001 was a bit of a watershed year for you. I
Mhm.
know it's now 22 years ago, but it
Amazing.
was also globally changing. So how did that year and the events that happened that year impact your life?
Yeah, it really changed my life forever. So the the version of the story that I'll tell you is from the perspective of an 18-year-old invincible kid. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was 18, I felt like nothing could take me down. I had the whole life in front of me, and I was practically immortal. So if you're listening out there and you're 18 years old, know that that's a great feeling, but it's just not true. None of us.
Well, we hope it's true for you, but
Yeah,
not
maybe,
always.
yeah. If you're 18, maybe by the time that you get to be my age, we will be invincible, or the fountain of youth will be created. I don't know, but I was going off to college, and I thought I was invincible 18-year-old kid. I was going to be playing football, American football, that is, not footy, although I do know a little bit about Aussie rules football. But I was going to be playing a sport. My family was from up there, and I was actually born in New York, which is about a 3 hour plane flight from where I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, here in the States. And I was going to spend more time with the family. I was going to play football and probably get an education. Now, I think my parents hoped that the education was higher on the list, but at least it made it on the list. Well, in a football season starts at the beginning of the school year, in the fall. But before that, in college, you have a training camp that's about 3 weeks to a month long. I mean, it's pretty intense practices. And I came up with what I thought was a pulled groin muscle my freshman year there, and I'm trying to prove myself to my new coaches and my new teammates that I had a pulled groin muscle. And the exercise that the trainers would have me do was shimmying across this training room on a three-wheeled stool. So I'm sitting on this little stool, and I guess part of the exercise is going to strengthen my hips and that those muscles around there. And because I don't know if you've ever pulled a groin muscle before, but that is an incredibly debilitating injury. You can't sit, walk, stand, twist. It's just very, very awkward. So this exercise is supposed to help me, I believe, but I'm like dodging people because 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning on a training camp day. I mean, it's like a zoo in the training room. There's 100 people. And one day after I'm doing this for like 3 or 4 days and I'm not getting any better, our head trainer stands on this box that he was a small guy, maybe 5'6", 150 pounds, soaking wet. And he would stand on this box and try to get everyone's attention. And I kid you not, it was usually loud and boisterous, but it just seemed like at that moment it got dead silent. And he cups his hands, and they used to call me Bobby. So he goes, Bobby, quit acting like a weakling. You need to be back out on the field. And I mean, what a hit to my ego. I thought I was this invincible 18-year-old. Here's this little trainer calling me out in front of everyone. And there's a key, the point to this story is that I thought I was invincible, but I went from being that to rather helpless. But little did I know, I was even more helpless than I thought. And so I went around for the next week going to all these doctor's appointments because I told the trainer, I was like, listen, Rick, I'm not getting any better. So something you got to fix me because I got to get back. I do want to be back out on the field. So he sent me to all these doctors, and now I'm an 18-year-old kid, technically an adult by the law, And so every time I would go to a different doctor's appointment, whether I was having CAT scans, sonograms, ultrasounds, MRIs, you name it, every test in the book, but I'd have to fill out all this paperwork, and these appointments would take hours and hours. And I never forget this. The last test or doctor's appointment that I thought I was supposed to have was just a couple of days before what would have been my first ever college football game. But we knew I wasn't playing the game at this point, but my parents were flying up from Florida to meet me. Now, I hadn't been away from my parents ever that long, but they expected me to be in this doctor's appointment like all day long, like all the other ones. But the moment I walked into the office that day, the receptionist called me back immediately. Like, Robert DePasquale, takes me right back to the room. No paperwork, not answering any medical questions. I was like almost surprised, but relieved. I sat down in the doctor's office, and he walks in maybe 30 seconds later, and he looks me in the eye and says, Bobby, you have cancer. And I was like, what? I'm invincible. I'm 18. There's no way that
it's
I have
a groin strain, damn it.
Oh, and it was so, I mean, most doctors I work with, they have pretty good bedside manner, but he just said, you have cancer. And I was like, huh? My jaw hits the desk. And he goes,
give it to me gently, dog.
yeah, exactly. You're 100% right. I'm thinking to myself, like, okay. And he goes, we're going to hook you up with an oncologist. You're free to go. And I was like, I didn't even know what an oncologist was. I couldn't even spell oncologist, no less know what that is. So I left the office in shock. I mean, I was probably white as a ghost. But I kid you not, the moment I walked outside of that building, the phone rang. It was like divine timing. My mom had called me, and she goes, hey, I didn't expect you to answer the phone because I thought you'd still be in the appointment. We landed, and we're on our way back to your uncle's house, which was where we were all going to meet because my family still lives up there, my extended family. And she goes, well, while I have you on the phone, how did the appointment go? And I said, about the appointment, Mom. And Amanda, I mean, it was one of the most challenging things I ever did, but I had to tell her what the doctor said. And I couldn't believe how silent the other side of the phone felt, but I could almost hear my mom screaming, like internally on the other end of the phone. And the only thing I end up really hearing, like truly hearing, was my dad saying, Susan, what's wrong? And he was sitting in the car next to her, and he could clearly tell himself that something was wrong based on her reaction to what I said. And so we all met back at my uncle's house. And you're probably thinking about this. You're probably thinking, okay, what are you going to do? You're an 18-year-old kid. And I hadn't seen my parents in a month, longest I had ever been away. So we shed some tears. We said some prayers. Like, I had given them a big hug, and we were just kind of looking at each other like, well, what are we going to do? So a couple of days went by, and my uncle's best friend, Tim, came over his house. Now, we hadn't know this guy from Adam. I mean, that was the Thursday when they came up. 2 days later, some guy comes over. Come to find out, my uncle's best friend, he walks into the house, says hi to my aunt and uncle, and he walks directly over to my parents. I mean, right up to them, and puts his hand in his pocket and pulls his keys out. And it just looked like he was shoving them in their face. And he handed the keys to my parents, and he said, Bob and Susan, I can't imagine what you're going through with your son right now. Take my car. You can have it for as long as you need it. And they were like dumbfounded. They're looking at him like, okay. And I thought to myself, man, that's the most generous thing that someone's ever done for my family and I. And come to find out, Tim was a pretty generous guy. But he said he gave the keys to my parents and was there for maybe 15 minutes total. Said goodbye to my aunt and uncle and left. And that was it. Tim was gone. And we were like, who is this guy? And
what just happened?
Yeah, like, huh? And my uncle was like, yeah, that's Tim. He's a pretty nice guy. I'm like, yeah, I see that. So fast forward a few more days. My second ever college class, Tuesday morning, we did end up talking with an oncologist, a cancer doctor. And he told me not to drop out of all my college classes. So I was going to start going to class. My second ever college class, Tuesday morning, I come out. I had to get something to eat before I was going to go to some more doctor's appointments. And I'm sitting in the cafeteria eating a breakfast burrito. And I'm watching the news. Now, I don't know the news station. I'm an 18-year-old. I never really watch the news. Plus, I don't know the news station up in New York. I don't live there. And I'm watching on one of those like old school bracket televisions, like 8 inches wide. It's hanging from the ceiling on the wall. And I'm watching, and all of a sudden, a plane crashes into a building. And I'm thinking to myself, oh man, that's a terrible accident. So I called my dad. And I'm like, hey, Dad, you watching the news? He goes, yeah, I just saw that plane crash. Well, that's terrible. And we were talking for maybe a minute, Amanda, and then all of a sudden, bam, another plane hit the skyscraper right next to it. And we didn't know it at the time, but it turned out that September 11th terrorist attacks were happening right there in New York where we were. And I was like, what do I do? So my dad's like, well, you better get home now. That was not an accident. Or get back to your uncle's house. So I sprinted as much as I could with what I thought was a groin injury previously. And I think that breakfast burrito is probably still sitting there. Hopped in the car. And it was typically a 15-minute drive from my uncle's house or school back and forth. Amanda, it took me 9 hours to drive a 15-minute drive. And I'm driving down the highway in Long Island, New York, burning towers in the distance, listening to riveting AM radio. I will never, ever listen to 9 straight hours of AM radio again. In fact, I've worked in radio before, and I have a master's degree in broadcast journalism, but I will never listen to 9 straight hours of AM radio. But I heard the whole thing. I ran out of gas when I got to my uncle's neighborhood. Thank God I made it off the highway. Ran out of gas. We
Probably could have walked faster, Bob.
Actually, it's actually a really good point. I probably would have been home fast. Well, we pushed my car into his driveway, my uncle's driveway, and my parents were like, "What? I cannot believe what's going on." And my aunt was hysterical. And we're looking at ourselves. I'm like, man, like a few days ago, I thought I was invincible. Then I thought my life might be over. Now I think the world's coming to an end. Like, what is going on? So my aunt couldn't get a hold of my uncle, who was supposed to be on business and flying home that morning. Well, finally, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, he calls. And he's like, hey, guys, really sorry. I know you're probably panicking. The phones have been out, but I'm caught in Denver. I'm okay. I'm safe. You don't have to worry about me. And we talked for a minute. We were going to hang up. And he said, wait a minute, though. Before I let you go, I got to tell you, remember my friend Tim? Well, he was in the towers this morning, and he died. And we all looked at each other, and we're like, you mean Tim, the guy who just, and we're like, yeah, that guy. Well, it turns out that Tim worked for an investment firm. You may have heard of it, even if you're, down under. Cantor Fitzgerald was the name of the firm that he worked for. And just about everyone from Cantor Fitzgerald was in the office that morning, except for their CEO, who was never not in the office. But something happened. He had like take his kid to school that morning, something silly that saved his life. And if you go to YouTube and you want to search for Howard Lutnick, his press conference after 9/11, the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, you will be, it's one of the most emotional things you'll ever watch. But this poor guy, lost his whole company pretty much. And he had the incredible survivor's guilt. Well, anyway, come to find out, Cantor Fitzgerald's a very generous firm, but Tim himself, my uncle's best friend, was a very, very generous guy. And the firm would give free office space to my uncle's foundation for cystic fibrosis, which is a disease my cousin has. And luckily, no one from the foundation was in the office that morning. The only lady who typically would be was Tammy. And she was caught in the subway that morning because she was uncharacteristically late for some silly reason too. And she ended up escaping. And it's always hit me, why did Tammy survive, but Tim and his colleagues didn't? Like, why do they deserve that? And there's really no answer to that. But you know how some people talk about you only live once, or fear of missing out, YOLO and FOMO? Well, it turns out that Tim had a little bit of a different twist and perspective on this. And he used to say, you never know when the last opportunity you have to be generous to someone will be. And it turns out that my family was Tim's last opportunity to be generous. And thank God, for my sake, he took advantage of it.
Wow. How powerful is that? What I was going to say what a year, but what even a week for you?
What if that 5 days was...
That's a bit epic.
I will never, I would never wish that on anyone.
And at 18, we'd like to think we're pretty smart and know everything then, but we're not terribly equipped to to deal with those. We don't
No,
have that life experience to be able
no,
to
not at
take
all.
that on and process
Not at
really
all.
quickly. So I'm guessing treatment went well. You're still with us,
Hmm. I was
and then
treated
you
pretty
went.
aggressively.
Sorry.
I was treated pretty aggressively. The cancer had spread. I mean, so if you didn't make the deduction, it was testicular cancer,
Yep.
which happens to be pretty popular amongst that age group, but it had spread out to my abdomen. So, well, I didn't have a whole lot
Wow.
of time, but my doctor said it was extremely aggressive, but also extremely curable.
I'm so pleased. So you then went on, finished off college, did a journalism degree. So how do you end up now with a CFP talking about personal finance? How did that happen?
Yeah, great question. Not a day goes by where I don't think about that period of time in my life. I always tell people this. I will not exaggerate anything in this story. It's 100% true. The only thing I like to exaggerate about is how quiet it was when Rick was calling my name and calling me out in front of the team. It seemed like it was dead silent and everyone, but it was probably a promotion. But my ego was really getting to me in that moment. But no, this is absolutely true. Literally, Amanda, every day I think about that period of time. Now, some days it's really quick, like, oh, hey, that happened, or a quick reminder. Or some days when, like on actual 9/11 day every year, it's usually, I might be thinking about it all day. It could be hours. I might be emotional. It just depends. But every day I think about it. And the reason why that's relevant to the story is because while I was working in finance, while I was working in radio, my master's degree, if I wasn't going to be playing sports, and obviously with my medical situation, I actually did end up coming back to play football a little bit, but ultimately I wasn't going to be playing professionally. And I was like, well, I'm just going to talk about it for a living then, because if I'm not going to be playing sports, I'll be talking about it. But I went into radio, but I noticed that the radio conglomerate that I was working for was doing some questionable things. At least I thought they were. Maybe they were legal, but they weren't really on the up and up. They were kind of hitting me in the morality filter. And I had been getting recruited, which is a whole other story, by this guy that worked for a financial organization. But I put him off for a while. I ended up getting back in touch because I promised him, and my parents kind of raised me to be a man of my word. And he hit me at the right time. And I thought I was going to go into the belly of the beast. I was getting a little burnout. Speaking of burnout in radio, I was working, really long, crazy hours. If you're not the number one radio host at our sports radio station, it can be a tough road. And so there was a couple different things that kind of all lined up. And I said, I'm going to go into the belly of the beast. I mean, if they're doing questionable things with money in the radio world, I can only imagine what they're doing in the actual financial world. And I thought I was going to go, I kind of had this hero complex. Like, I'm going to go fix the world. I'm going to go teach everyone how to be wise and generous with their money, and I'm going to teach everyone a lesson. And I come to find out I was really, really wrong. I mean, I found out that a lot of people are generous and they want to be generous. The problem is they believe that they're incapable of doing so. And so, in short, that's really how I got to where I'm at today. I went in because I thought I was going to go change people, but it's not the people that need to be changed, it's the systems.
So you talk about how generosity can make us rich. What's your philosophy there? How does that work?
Well, if you're a business owner and you're looking for that answer, I can give you scientific evidence that the most generous organizations have the most loyal customers, they have the best best employee retention ratios, and they're the fastest growing companies, and they make quite a bit of money. Um, but your question suggests that it's more about the fulfillment and joy in life, and it truly is. So yes, if you want a radically growing company, build a radical workplace culture, and that's what I love to talk about organizations with in my um, my other work. But I truly believe that giving is receiving, and that the way that you become rich in what you have is to give what you can. And so the people that I know who are super generous, people that have poured into my life, without fail, all of them are joyful people. And so there is also scientific evidence from a biological perspective here that giving ultimately does make you feel better. And it's literally contagious. I mean, when you see generous acts happening, you receive the same oxytocin hormones and dopamine hits that the people that are actually involved in some kind of giving. So you don't just have to be the receiver or the giver, you can be a third party onlooker. And so that tells me that giving truly is receiving, and giving is the way to find a joyful life and to have what I like to call a rich life. And so my work now in that space is really revolves around helping people believe that they're capable of giving, because once they believe they're capable, they do, and then they find that richness.
I've done a little bit of work with a group called Hands Across the Water. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you've heard of them, an Australian charity, and Mr. Peter Baines, who heads that up, is a fabulous man. He used to be a forensic policeman who now heads up this charity helping orphans in Thailand since the tsunami. And he's even done a book, Doing Good by Doing Good, where he researches this concept of, yeah, the organizations that are philanthropic are the ones that tend to do better. So it's, I guess, that givers gain philosophy of what we put out does come back to us, whether you believe in karma or not, or putting things out into the universe. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's that reciprocity where people do want to be generous back to you.
100%. I mean, if you, once again, going back to the business people, if you're a networker and you like to connect people and build relationships, if you become known as the person that's giving, some people will tell you out there that then people will take advantage of you and you become like a, the charity.
The cynics amongst us all, yes.
Yeah. But honestly, yes, that can happen if you have a bad relationship with your giving. If you think it's like it's a desperation or a necessity, you don't have to give. I'm just telling you that it's natural to, and that people, and that it makes you feel good. And so if you have the right relationship with being a giving person, and once again, we don't just mean writing checks, we also giving your time and giving other resources. I guarantee you, and I can't guarantee much because I work in the financial industry, so I got to be careful what I guarantee. But I guarantee you
We'll
that
put a
if
disclaimer on this
you,
for you, Bob.
yeah, there you go. This is not financial advice. Put that in the show.
This is not taking your personal circumstances into account.
Yes, yes. But I can guarantee you truly that if you are the giving type of person and you're known for being that, having that mindset and thinking that way, then you're ultimately going to benefit, because people are going to see you and they're going to know who you are. They're going to know other things about you. They're going to come to you for other opportunities. And they're also going to come to you with opportunities for you, because they know and they trust that if you have success, that you're going to do the right thing with that platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you bring out some, it doesn't have to be about the handing over money. We can give our time. It's one of our most beautiful gifts. And sometimes just a listening ear is all
Mhm.
somebody needs at a particular time, which is a beautiful way to give as well, especially if we might be going through tough times. That we've got massive cost of living crises all over the world right now.
Mhm.
People, may not have the ability to be generous financially, but there's so many ways we can give back to those who are either not as fortunate or just need something right now. So beautiful. Do you have any personal finance tips you'd like to share, Bob, that you've learned along the way as a financial expert?
Yes. Well, one of my favorite ones to share when it comes to just personal finance or family finance is that you should spend your money intentionally. And a lot of people think that us in the financial planning world, and especially if you're an investment manager, that that the thought is don't spend any money. Spend as little money as you possibly can. Keep it all in your investment accounts and kind of hoard it. And while I definitely agree that saving for the long term is key in just about any society with the way money works in our world, one of my favorite things to tell people to do, whether they're a customer of our firm or they're just someone that I know, is that you should identify those top priority, high priority things that are within reason that bring you joy. And for some people, it is their daily Starbucks. I found that for most people, it isn't. And so I usually tell people not to be spending money that consistently because it adds up. But whatever it might be within reason, spend money on something that brings you joy or is good for your family that you want to do together. Because if you are satisfied, then you're less likely to be tempted by other things. And the best example or illustration of this is a diet. If you eat a healthy diet and you eat reasonable amounts of food and you take care of yourself, you're less likely to have cravings to eat donuts and cake and cookies and all those other things that the food scientists have developed to make you desire. So in your life, if there's something that really is meaningful, it's going on a date night with your spouse or your kids or taking your kids to the movie theater, it's okay to spend money on that, because believe me, I think you're less likely to succumb to the Amazon one-click buy for that latest electronic device or whatever it is. So quick advice, or maybe not so quick advice, is to identify one or two things that are really meaningful and move the needle for you and your family, and carve out the money and spend it on that.
Yeah, beautiful. One of the things I find is everyone goes, I am going to stop my daily Starbucks, my $5 on that, but they don't do anything with that. So
Mm-hmm.
if there's a goal in the family, like it's for date night, it's for paying down the mortgage or whatever it may be, if
Mm-hmm.
that $5 isn't now going to Starbucks, put it on the mortgage, put it on the credit card,
Mm-hmm.
put it towards date night, because otherwise just not spending it, you'll spend it on something else. It's
Yeah,
just how we roll. It's not having
100%.
an impact if we're not doing something with it. So I love your idea of having a priority of like, this is my splurge. This is, life isn't about just hoarding it all and putting it away. So if we're not doing things that bring us joy, what's the point of money anyway, that to
Yeah,
pay the
it's
bills?
just a
So
tool. It's a powerful tool. Don't get me wrong. It's why we work in this industry, but it's a tool. It's nothing more.
yeah, beautiful. Any last minute bits to wrap up? I mean, you've had such an incredible story from, the most epic week that most people would ever live through in their lives, to coming out the other side, to, radio and journalism career, moving into personal finance, now podcasting about generosity. I mean, this is a beautiful journey that you've had. What are some top tips that you've taken away that you now live personally that you can share with others?
I learn more lessons from the people that I serve than I do from anyone. Nothing against my mentors, because I've had some people that have really poured into my life. I alluded to earlier that I wouldn't be here without. But since I've become a professional, the amount of lessons I learned from people that working with them is I can't tell you. I mean, it all starts with all the people that I was supposed to be counseling financially, and I actually learned a lot from them, that they are truly generous people. So that's where it kicked off. But now in my work today, the organizations that I work with and people that I speak with, and even still our customers that we work with today, we use the term partners in our business because we want to partner with these people in their mission, which is a really powerful term. And I'm also finding that there's dual meaning to this. Not only are we partnering and kind of coming alongside them, but they're also teaching us, and we're learning things from them as well. And so when you surround yourself with people that you work well with, you learn stuff. So my first piece of personal advice for anyone, no matter what age, what profession, what stage they are in life, is learn the lessons that the people you serve teach you. So powerful. And then one other thing that I like to point out is that in my life, I don't know about you, we've talked about burnout before. We've talked about, hard work for good causes. I know that I have about 4 hours of like deep, like strong work every day. And then I have another 4 hours where I'm working or doing something, but I can't be a really super high leverage. So I've learned that just about everybody that I know that works really hard has that 4 hour window. Not the problem, but the difference is when is that window? So if you're out there and you're trying to make a difference, you're looking to make changes in your financial life or your business life, or you're starting a new project, whatever it is, you got to know when those 4 hours of deep work are, and put those high priority tasks in those windows. So for me, I know that my window is 8 to 12, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. So I know when I schedule my day, I put the good stuff in there. And that even goes for the weekend when it's like strict family time. I make sure that we're doing like great stuff with the family between those hours of the day. So advice, identify your deep work hours and put the highest priority tasks for you. And I'm not telling you what those tasks are. That's up to you. But figure out when those hours are and dump them right in there. And I guarantee you, here I am guaranteeing again. I'm assuming or hoping that'll make those times that much better.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice. We can all use a bit of that in our lives to get those the monkeys off our back that we keep procrastinating on, for sure, whether it's financial or physical tasks that we need to do. So
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing to that now that I think about it. Sometimes that deep work, or it's not necessarily an action that you even know what to do yet. Like, you may be struggling with your finances or having some other issue in life. Maybe that deep work or those 4 hours are just the strategy, or just thinking about it. Maybe you need to actually do less and think about it more because you're not distracted.
yeah, great advice. there a book once about eat the green frogs first, then you can enjoy the rest of the meal, do the hard stuff
Yep.
right up, and then everything else seems a bit easier. So
Yeah.
often those tasks we've been putting off for so long, when we finally do them, they didn't take us quite as long as we'd imagined they would. So
Exactly. Exactly.
procrastination, beautiful thing. Thank you so much for sharing with us your incredible story today, Bob. Really enjoyed having you on Meet the Experts for this season, and hoping some people will learn those beautiful lessons around generosity. And I think we're living in a world right now where being kind and paying it forward is probably more important than ever.
Awesome. I
I'm
love
sure
it.
you agree. Thanks so much for joining us, Bob.
Thanks, Amanda. Have a generous day.
Thank you so much.